So some people are finding that STEM fields are starting to flood out, and I kind of predicted this a few years ago. For people who saw my like really early work, the old classic financial physics stuff, yeah, I mean, I said that the STEM fields eventually were going to start to flood out because so many people are going to rush into it, thinking that okay, well, I'm going to go into that because all these other degrees, you know, like psychology degrees and English literature degrees and obscure 13th century French poetry degrees, you know, are gonna flood out, and of course they did. Well, the next shoe to drop would be STEM, and of course the reason I said that was because of the birth rates. So again, you know, I hammer on birth rates here a lot. I mean, in terms of analysis, I know that some of you don't like a lot of my analysis, but you know, in terms of analysis, when it comes to when the rubber meets the road, you got to look at the birth rates. You got to look at the demand. You got to look at what's going on in the real world. And so many people are too detached from the real world, particularly your politicians and your bankers. They're too detached from that because their idea is to keep number go up forever. So when people like me, you know, out here in the real world start pointing out like, hey, you know, there isn't enough demand to support any of this, it becomes a problem. Now, so the question that I got was like, do I think that the trades will start to flood out? Yes and no. You will start to see trades eventually flooding as more people, particularly men, say, okay, well, shoot, I can't make any money doing anything else, and I've got a, like, you know, I have an advanced PhD in chemistry, and I can't really use it for anything. I mean, I would argue you can, you just don't want to necessarily. You have to go into business for yourself with that one. You know what I'm saying? So, but if you don't want to do that, then, you know, for whatever reason, or you don't have the right distribution network, et cetera, then yeah, you're going to have to look for something else. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll go into construction or plumbing or electrical or something like that. That's what a lot of guys are going to start doing. And the same problem exists. There isn't enough demand for, I know that they're building all these buildings. We're building cities to nowhere kind of thing. This is the China model, right? This is where you just build a bunch of cities, but there's no real demand. It's a command economy in all but name. In the US, here's how it works. We have government spending, and then that government spending goes to, you know, like a contract, some no-bid contract goes to some corporation they're trying to bail out. And then that company, the kickback part of that is, oh, you have to hire a bunch of people and then build a bunch of stuff. That isn't a demand economy. I realize that company, it has a demand to have you build buildings and run plumbing and electrical conduit and so on, but there's no actual market demand for that. What's a market? I'm not even going to answer it in this video because you can go back to the hundreds of videos where I have explained what a market is. So this will be good for some of you. There's no market demand for that. There's no actual economic demand for more buildings for building more buildings. They can't even fill the buildings they have now. I drive by buildings every day that they're just empty. There's no one in those buildings. There's nothing going on. I can see daylight through all of these buildings along the 8 where they've been basically condemned. I don't know if you could really do anything. I think that the cost to do anything with them would be so high that you wouldn't do anything with them anyway. It costs more money to tear it down and haul it all away than the property's even worth. So this is a huge problem now because you didn't let the market fix itself years ago, and they're still not allowing the markets to correct themselves now. On top of that, you also have this mass migration thing that's happening, and I know that the propaganda is no, they're stopping all. No, they're not. They're not stopping any of that. They're still trying to figure out how they can bring in more people. Remember, Ponzi schemes work great if you're adding people, and the dollar is a giant Ponzi scheme, so you have to keep adding people. So they have to keep adding people to play the game to keep it going. And this is, of course, destroying U.S. culture. It's destroying American culture. It's gutting American culture, right along with the rest of the Western countries, which is where all that culture war stuff's coming from. This is where it kind of blends in together. So to answer your question this way would be, let's say that you actually got your wish and you got the 50 million deportations. Let's say that you got your wish and everybody here on a visa in the US, for example, I'm talking specifically to Americans, if everybody on a visa was kicked out. Well, if you had that, then there would be almost no demand for almost anything, except for like maybe building houses and what have you. And the thing is that the trades, the price is based in dollars, would start coming down. They'd have no choice but to start bringing their rates down, because there'd be so little demand that prices have to start coming down. I say this as someone who's a contractor myself. So, like, I mean, I see this coming too. And I think other contractors are starting to see this on the horizon as well, that unless you're able to get somehow into the so-called command economy thing and get a bunch of government contracts or something, which is just, again, that's just money printing, inflation, and you're just crushing your poor and your middle class, what's left of your middle class. You're destroying them by doing this, because you're just printing money and you're pushing all that inflation off to the bottom, right? Because inflation always gets pushed to the lowest spot, which is your poor and your working class. So, which is going to just, you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a feeding frenzy. Like, does that make sense? As more and more people get pushed down, the more and more people are going to want to try and go into trades, which makes it even, like, you know what I'm saying? It just makes it worse. Like, well, what's the solution? Well, the solution would be you let the markets correct. You let housing prices, car prices, insurance rates, you let all those stuff just collapse. You let it all go down. But the banking system is based almost exclusively on the idea of number go up in perpetuity. That's the banking system. That is not just capitalism. That's a little too reductionist. I like to be a bit more precise and say, nope, it's specifically banking. It's specifically the dollar that is the currency that's the problem. Okay? I mean, if you want to get really specific, that's what it actually is, because the rest of that stuff is all downstream of that. Near term, no, a lot of people are going to flood into trades, and there's going to be a lot of demand for a few things. They're going to shuffle the deck a little bit, and they'll do some more building. But just keep in mind, contractors and everybody else out there, there isn't a market demand for that. The market isn't demanding that. The market is demanding, it's like, well, there's a demand for housing. Yes, there's a demand for housing, but there's only demand for housing because they're flooding the country with illegals, and they will never deport these people. Those of you who are just wondering, by the way, this is my thought on this. You do what you want to do. They're not deporting people, they're detaining people. They're detaining them in facilities where they are trying to get these women there pregnant, so that way they drop anchor babies. Oh my God, that's a horrible conspiracy theory. You think that a slave breeding program, you think you're the first one to think of that? That's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, there's only so much further I can go here on TikTok with that, but I mean, if you were here in person, like, dude, we could go through the history of that. That isn't new. That isn't like, oh my God, a shocking revelation. No. That's thousands of years old. Slave breeding programs have been around for a long time. So no, I mean, like, this is the idea of trying to prop all of it up instead of letting it all correct and letting your fake billionaire class, your fake trillionaire class, your fake governments, all the fake bankers, all of this money correct. And then if you did that and everybody went home, for example, then there would be a surplus of houses in the U.S. Like, I mean, a massive surplus. Like, as in, it would be almost like The Stand, the Stephen King. Like, I think back in 1994, 95, they did like The Stand with Gary Sinise, and you just basically go to a neighborhood and pick a house because they're pretty much all empty. So, yeah, it would be damn near like that if they were to actually implement all of that. That'd be a great thing, culturally speaking, because then people would be able to breathe a lot easier. And of course, then your birth rates will come up naturally. They will come up naturally at that point. But a lot of Americans are at this point, pretty skeptical of the school system, and with good reason. So that's why they don't want to do that. They want people they can control.